Hello everybody, welcome to Technique Tuesday. Today we are going to be making a twisted ribbon card. It's actually using designer series paper, but it looks like a ribbon that has been woven and folded around the card. So this is what it looks like. It's a little bit gluey, but thank you to Stampin' Up for giving us silicone mats. I think we're going to be fine. So let's get started. So these are the ingredients. This is a one I made earlier for later. So we're going to take a piece of real red cardstock, and it's cut at 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4, and I've got 2 for some reason. I'm going to be making one. So as usual, we fold it in half, give it a nice score line, and then the next step is to put the layer on, which is 4 by 5 1/4. So we'll just quickly stick that on, get all the neat and tidy bits out the way before we get a little bit sticky. So that just gets layered on. The other bit is the stamping for the greeting, and this is the Soft Succulent, and it's 1 7/8 by 2 7/8, 1 3/4 white layer by 2 3/4. As always, the dimensions and the instructions will be in the bottom, but let's get this stamped real quickly. I'm going to be using 2 stamp sets. I'm going to be using the poinsettia from Ringed with Nature, and I'm actually going to be using the Christmas greetings from Decorated with Happiness. So we're going to stamp those in real red and Soft Succulent, and I've already gone ahead and attached each polymer stamp to the acrylic block just for quickness. So we'll go ahead and stamp poinsettia nice and red. I think I've shown using these stamps before how it stains it. It's perfectly fine. It still stamps clear, but you will always be a lovely pink, unfortunately. So, and then just to show how much it doesn't affect the stamping, when we do the Soft Succulent, the Christmas stamp, it's because it's a little bit thinner, it doesn't look quite as pink, but it is stained red. But when we stamp the Soft Succulent, it doesn't bear any hard feelings, and it just stamps nice and green. It hasn't gone a sludgy brown or anything like that. So I'll pop those off to one side. That's actually, ooh, come on, that's the stamping taken care of. So then we can just go ahead and attach that layer on top of each other and set that off to one side with the body of the card. So here's the ribbon part. It's a little bit complicated. It's a little bit messy, actually, not so much complicated, but there are measurements. And what I did, because I'm a visual learner, is I actually wrote myself directions just so I get the right piece on the right side. What you need are 4 strips each of designer series paper that measure 2.5 by 3/4 inches. So that's these. There's 4 of the ones that have the poinsettia showing, and the other side is just the plain. And the trick is, whichever pattern you want to be the more dominant, you put on second. So this came from, let me just remind myself, Boughs of Holly. That's the designer series paper. So this is a piece of cardstock, 5 1/4 by 2. Not very complicated, that. But what we need to do is we need to measure at every 3/4 of an inch. And I would use the side of this, but it kept going for a walk. So I took to sticking it down when I was doing my demonstration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, oops, put it here. You can see actually where I've had the pencil marks on ones I made earlier. And at every 3/4 inch, I'm just going to put a little pencil mark. And there should be 6 of them. So turn it over and do the same. It's every 3/4 inch, but again, I will put what every 3/4 inch is in the description in the bottom, but you didn't need to watch me sit and wade my way through that description. So what we need to do is we need to glue the pieces on a diagonal. So I numbered mine, as you can see. So what we're going to do is get the silicone pad or get a piece of scratch paper, because there's going to be a little bit of overhang and there's going to be glue, and you don't want it to get on your work surface. That's when I said it would be a bit complicated. Wrong choice of words, really. It was going to be a little bit messy. So we're going to just put the liquid glue, because it sticks well, but it's also just that itty bitty little bit of forgiving. So this is the right side, so we're going to go from the 6th mark up to the 7th one, which is actually the top corner. So we're just going to stick that on. Easy peasy. We're on a roll, guys. And then we're going to get some glue to come out, please. Thank you. And then that is going to go between the 5th one and the 4th on the bottom. And we're using the right hand side of the pieces of cardstock, designer series paper, to accomplish that. So then we're going to go from 3 down to 2 on the right hand side of, using the right hand side of the paper. And then last but not least, we're going to put the last one on, which runs from number 1 to number 0, which is the edge again of the cardstock, same like over on the other side. So once we've got those on, when I lift this up, you'll see why it's a good idea to have a silicone pad. I've got a piece of, because the glue just wipes off that. If it gets onto your work surface, it's going to make it awfully sticky. But now we need to work the other way. And in order to be able to see where this edge is, we really need to trim it off. As you know, I usually use my lovely Stampin' Up! Paper snips, just because they're sharp and they get right into corners. But when it's icky and gooey, I just use a pair of icky gluey scissors. They're the ones I use for all like the dirty jobs. And that should show us where the corner is, where we don't want the mess to go. So now we're going to use the poinsettia pieces. Same principle, but we're going to be working the other way, because we want them to zigzag and overlap. So the glue is going on the red side, so the poinsettia side comes out, and we're going to go from 0 down to the diagonal corner of 1. I hope I'm not making this sound more complicated than it needs to be, but it was the best way that I could do it, was just to number them to help me and my feeble little brain. And then I had to draw a picture, because again, visual learner. Come on, little gluey. Let's be having you. And then we're going to go from 2 down to 3 using the left hand side of the top paper going over. I must be getting to the end of my glue. So here we go, from 4 down to 5 using the left hand side of the paper as the guide. And then the last one, there we go. We put the lid on before that dries out completely. The last one is going to go from 6 down to 7, which is the very tippy edge of the white cardstock. So there you have it. They're all lined up. They're all very, very sticky. And what I suggest you would do is wait until that dries. So in order to live up to my blue Peter. Here's one I made earlier. Let me just wipe that down just a smidge. We'll bring back in the one I made earlier, which has had a chance to dry, bless its heart. And now we are going to imagine that we've trimmed off all these bits. Even with sticky scissors, there's no point to gunk them up. It's just nice to leave them, let them dry, trim them off, and this is what you will end up with, nicely trimmed. So then we'll go back to the card and put it on. Looks all right, but I think it would look nicer if it had a border. So I thought, okay, Soft Succulent are the little insides of the poinsettias. So when I've been making lots of cards of late, trimming down the layers, you could have 1/2 inch on each side. And I've got all these lovely 1/2 inch pieces. Well, what do you do with them? Not much really, until I had the idea that I would cut them down to be the same length as the layer I want to go on and just attach them, because nobody's going to know that that isn't a whole piece under there. And it's a nice way to use up all these little extra pieces that you've got, because I do like to save money, but I just don't want the cardstock to go to waste when it's so lovely. So we put adhesive down the sides and then just attach them, leaving a 1/4 inch sticking out. Same on the other side, 1/4 inch sticking out. There's this whole bit at the back that nobody is any the wiser of, because then when we go ahead and stick these down, ta-da! My scrimpy little heart is as happy as anything. So then we'll put that on there. What piece of cardstock? It's completely green under there. Honest governor. And then here is the greeting that we stamped earlier. So we'll just go ahead and stick that on. Everything coordinates nicely. And then for my last trick, I have got some of these fabulous red and green adhesive backed pearls, which are red and green and silver and gold. And we are going to use the green ones, which just ever so conveniently happen to be Soft Succulent and match immaculately. They look like the little bobbles in here. Pop those off to one side and ta-da! There's the card. It's got a nice little bit of bling on it. Everything coordinates. Like I say, if you don't have a silicone pad, I honestly, truly would recommend that you invest in one. If not, use a piece of scratch paper, because all that glue that was on here that just wiped off would be all over here. And when I put this down, you would hear, but you don't. So there we go. Nice and easy. I think it's a great little idea. It's actually good. I cut my cardstock on purpose, but if you had, again, some strips when you cut in 2 5-inch layers out of 12-inch cardstock, 10 inches, and you've got a 2-inch strip or a 1-inch strip at the bottom, you can cut them down and make them into these cards. Absolutely fabulous. There you go. Twisted ribbon. Thanks so much for watching.